While many leaders involved in the civil rights movement became frontmen and the faces of the ideals, leaders remaining out of the spotlight played an equally important role in the success of their mission. One of these often overlooked leaders went by the name Ella Baker. In this image, we can see young Ella Baker, third from right. Ella Baker was born in Norfolk, Virginia on December 13, 1903, but raised in Linton, North Carolina, where she spent a majority of her early years. These formative years can be accredited for her work in the civil rights movement later, as she listened to her grandparents' stories about being enslaved and formed a newfound appreciation for her community. Also accredited for her work ethic and determination, her parents were driven and worked tirelessly in the area. Her father, Blake Baker, was a waiter on a ferry line, and her mother, Georgina Ross, was a schoolteacher, healthcare worker, and a midwife. As for education, she attended high school at the Academy of Shaw University in Raleigh, where she also attended college. One little-known fact about Baker was that she was valedictorian of her class in 1927. This made her the first African-American valedictorian in this university's history and highlighted the importance of education to African-American communities. During her time at Shaw University, she also created the Student Nonviolent Committee on campus, which advocated for civil rights through peaceful demonstrations, much like Martin Luther King Jr., who she would later work closely with. Following her education, she moved to New York City in search of a job. Eventually, she landed a position at the YMCL, which aided African Americans who were seeking financial independence and also investigated unfair labor practices. Following this position in 1941, Ella started a new job as a field secretary for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, where she traveled throughout the South, gaining support, raising funds, and spreading their message of the importance of the civil rights movement. This was dangerous work, especially for a young African American woman, and despite this, Baker was successful in creating a large community for the NAACP. Because of her hard work in early years, she was eventually promoted to the National Director of Branches, where she was able to discuss her concerns about the organization, such as it had too much focus on the middle class and that it was too bureaucratic. In 1946, she stepped down from this position. However, again, after a couple years, she returned, becoming the president of the New York branch. But again, like a cycle, she began distancing herself from the NAACP and began helping the foundation of an organization called In Friendship, whose purpose was to raise funds in the South for civil rights activism. She was invited to support the creation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, where she met MLK and agreed to serve as a grassroots organizer. Because of her earlier contacts with the NAACP, she was able to travel the South, raising further awareness for their cause. But again, despite her hardest work, women were overlooked for their role as the backbone of the movement, which Ella expressed much distaste of, in turn decreasing her popularity in the organization. This neglectfulness pushed Baker over the edge, and she made her final resignation. However, just because she didn't work for these organizations anymore didn't mean she was ready to retire from advocating for civil rights. She made the trek back to Raleigh, where she called on over 200 student activists at Shaw University. From here, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was born, with Baker becoming an advisor. Some of her other impressive actions include organizing the Mississippi Democratic Party, traveling to Puerto Rico to advocate for their civil rights, and voicing her opinions on numerous social justice issues. In the end, Ella Baker brought people together. Up until her death on December 13, 1986, she was a beacon of hope for the civil rights movement. Her earlier days prepared her for a life fighting for what she knew was right. From a behind-the-scenes organizer to giving speeches to gather student support, Baker lived for the hope that African Americans would eventually be seen as equals in the eyes of American society. It is no doubt that Ella Baker was influential to this movement and left her mark in the history books of future America. For more information about the amazing life of Ella Baker, check out these links.